Alrighty, gang. Second reading on our module on bodies and spaces, challenges for contemporary rhetoric. And this is a short little piece by Sara Hendren. All technology is assistive, 6 design rules on disability. So Sara Hendren is not a rhetoric or even a communications scholar. I believe she's an anthropology professor. But I came across her work through a fellow colleague who I was talking about ecology stuff in the last video, and this is all kind of in that ecology world because she's interested in bodies and how bodies relate to the designed and built environment. Now, if you think about ecology from that kind of biological perspective, right? Think about an organism in an environment and all of the other organisms and all the like little considerations of mobility and resources and food and energy and interactivity and threat and cooperation and collaboration. I mean, you can talk about those things in relationship to humans in social spaces and social environments. There's still a lot of those kinds of dynamics going on in terms of appetite and hunger and safety and security. And so bodies in spaces, with the Barnett stuff, we were more kind of thinking about spaces, and we were thinking about how it is that our rhetorics kind of lead us to impact our planet, our environment, and how we need to be thinking about our impact, and we need to think about our relationship to the land itself and to our environments and to the air and etc. Hendren's focuses on bodies themselves, and this, I guess, falls under the kind of the heading of like disability studies, but I'm not really thinking about it so much as like we're talking about disability as we're talking about bodies, and we're talking about particularities, and we're talking about the relationship between bodies and surroundings. Again, in that kind of ecological sense, where we're trying to think about particular physical bodies and beings, individuals. We all have one, and they're all different. And here's the other thing, is the body you have right now, today, is different than the one yesterday, a year ago, 20 years ago, right? So we're always evolving, changing, getting bigger, thinner, taller, probably not shorter, but we're growing, we're changing, we're always going through changes, we're going through difficult things, painful things, break a leg, or we get a cold, or something. I got stung by a scorpion a couple years ago, and I lost all sensation in my arm for like 6 weeks. It was wild. And you certainly have a different kind of relationship, like when your arm goes numb, and it's like you have a very different kind of relationship with your surrounding world when something like that happens, right? And so that's kind of the stuff we're talking about here. Now, again, because Sara Hendren's not a rhetorician or even a communication scholar, she's not really interested in those kinds of dynamics and questions, but I'll do my best to try to make connections here. Because I think that the stuff that she's talking about is really great, and it connects with a bunch of other kind of concerns that I have in rhetoric, having to do with design and aesthetics and materiality and creativity and invention and all that. So I've really enjoyed her work lately, and I really love her kind of simple but profound and very clear approach that she takes. So if the Barnett reading was asking us to think very big, capaciously about rhetoric and the planet, here we want to be thinking very, very particularly, very specifically, right? We want to think about in terms of particularities, particular bodies, and also particular bodies in particular situations, moments, times, right? I'm in my early 50s, and my body today is I have a lower back issue lately that's just killing me. I'm pretty sure it's from bartending. When I was getting my PhD for 3 years, I bartended pretty much every weekend, for hours and hours, and I just bent over all night, just picking up beers out of coolers, replacing kegs, just all night, thousands and thousands of times over the course of 3 years. And I think I did some really some serious damage that I'm really starting to suffer from. So it's affecting my ability to walk, sit, right? And it's I feel as though I'm sort of disabled right now. I have a handicap. And so the first point that she wants to make is this idea of like, this is the bottom of the first page. After she gives us this interesting example of the Ames chair, my wife, her name is Amy, and she is a designer. She has a firm. If your parents or anyone you know are looking to design and build a really, 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 really nice, super expensive home, look up Tilt 23 Studios. That's my wife's business. She designs high-end custom homes. And so she's like super obsessed with design, and she loves the Ames chair and the Ames designer. And because her name is Amy, she actually asks us to call her Ames for short. So I was thinking about her when I was reading this business about the Ames. Like, it starts with a medical diagnosis that becomes this like legendary famous chair, right? And that's an interesting opening illustration, because later she talks about, what if we took medical kind of design diagnostics and kind of pushed it out and didn't only think of it in terms of like a medical problem, but like, what if we tried to blur the lines between medical diagnosis design and just everyday kind of design, right? And so that gets us to the first point at the bottom of that first page there. First of all, the end of the second paragraph, it says, the Ames story suggests that disability concerns are in fact an overlooked source of rich aesthetic ideas, with relevance and impact for design far beyond their immediate starting point. More than that, the story demonstrates why everyone should pay more attention to matters of disability. The end of that page, she says, first thing that we should do if we're thinking about design, bodies, abilities, disabilities, is first, any us/them distinction between able-bodied / able-minded and disabled is a false divide, right? So this idea of normal-brained, normal-bodied, abnormally brained, abnormally bodied, with this big chasm separating, right, the normals from the abnormals. She's like, first of all, we need to get rid of that distinction, right? So the example I just gave you of my back would suggest that I am disabled and that I am sort of like crippled or whatever, right? Whereas I used to be healthy. She's very adamant about like spectrums and gradations, and it's not like there's healthy and unhealthy, able-bodied and disabled, right? Able-minded and abnormal-minded, right? These distinctions, these stark distinctions, we need to kind of push past that. If we want to be not even just like, it's not even just the empathy argument that she's making here. Like, it would be nice if, right? Like that Barnett piece had a lot of like, you need to be careful about how you make your choices environmentally, right? Like the violent trees that were destroyed to make the pages that he was working on, right? So he was very, like, there's motion there. There's not the same kind of emotion here. It's not about like, we need to be nice, we need to be empathetic. It's just, we need to be more accurate. We need to be more realistic with the range of possibilities that any single given body experiences throughout the course of their life, however long that life might be, right? When you're a little body or a little baby, I'm a grandparent. I don't know if you know this, but I actually have a 3-year-old granddaughter. They come over every Sunday and I get to play with her, although it's starting to get hard to play when my back's so sore. But playing with a 3-year-old is wild, right? Because like, you got to lift her up onto the bed and you got to carry her here and help her with this and step stools, and it's like this tiny little creature and she needs so much help, and she's so like, the world's just so different for her. It's just wild to kind of like experience life through that perspective, right? Now, I'm 6'2" and of a certain weight and size and all the rest of it, and it's a very different kind of experience. And, you know, in my own life, I've been smaller, thinner, shorter, more flexible, less flexible, all the rest of it. So I've read this point that Hendren has made elsewhere, which is like, in the course of our own lives, our bodies go all over the place, right? And so even one single body is many bodies over the course of many years and experiences and so on, right? So let's get rid of these distinction between capable and incapable, or able and disabled, and let's think more about gradations. She says in the next page, about 4 lines down, all people over the course of their lives traffic between times of relative independence and dependence, right? When you're younger, you're more dependent. Then you get into your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, independent. When you're younger, you're dependent. Then you become independent, and then when you get older, you get dependent again. And you're too young to maybe know about this, but you know, being the age that I'm at right now, I've come into a new term, friends of mine been using this term, the sandwich generation or the sandwich age, right? So myself, my wife, all of our like friends who are kind of our age, we are now at a point in our lives where many of us have kids that we're still kind of getting up on their feet. My wife and I have a 24, a 23-year-old, and almost 16 and a half. Right, lots to do on that front with the kids, getting them up and running, but also like parents. Now our parents, not just mine. My mom's in pretty good shape. I had 2 dads; they're both gone, sadly. But my mom's doing good. She just had COVID recently, sadly, but she's good. But my wife's folks are not so good, and like a lot of my friends' folks are also like moving in with them or putting them up, and so we are in this place now of like we are in the independence phase. But we've got dependence over here and we've got dependence over here. And soon enough, we'll be in that sad last category, right? It happens to all of us. Trust me, it will happen. If you're lucky, if you hang in there, it will happen to you too. So gradations, let's get past the us and them kind of thing, or good and bad and so on. And second, she notes on 140 is this idea of like, let's get rid of this idea of an ideal, right? This notion of a norm or an ideal. She's like, this is itself is a kind of a manufactured thing, right? So again, she's not a rhetoric scholar, but she could be talking about how the very idea of an ideal body type is a kind of rhetorical construction, right? We come up with these kinds of social constructions all the time, and maybe they're right. Maybe they're pretty good, right? Like the food pyramid is this kind of social engineered thing that we relied on when I was growing up. It was all about that food pyramid. And then we learned that, oops, maybe it wasn't so perfect and so great, so let's get rid of the pyramid and go with something else, right? So her thing is like, let's just kind of move away from pyramids and bests and no ideals, and let's just think more particularly about what things actually do and what their needs are, right? So let's get past exceptional, let's get past, normal, and all the rest. So the very end of the page, she says, all technology is assistive technology. That's quite a statement, right? So this is assistive technology. It's helping me write. These are certainly assistive technology. This thing here is assistive, right? And the other thing is what counts as a technology. Everything pretty much is a technology. This is a technology for helping me read and understand things, right? This is a technology for helping me preserve my ideas over time and to be able to carry it around portably, right? Let's see here. This is a technology for displaying my name at a social function in a convenient, visible way. And so on and so on. This is a pretty wonderful technology. Little ideas, important little ideas placed in the most relevant, accessible location. All of this stuff is technology, and it's all assisting, right? So again, let's get past this idea that there's like technology for the disabled to help them be normal, but all the other technology is just for fun or whatever, right? All technology is assistive, and most things are technologies. Most things that aren't our bodies are technologies. That chair in my corner is a technology for sitting and relaxing and resting for a period of time, and it's a really nice chair, by the way. That O-ring is a technology for helping me record videos when the weather starts to get a little, or when the day starts to get a little dark. Technologies, 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 and they're all assisting, right? Am I disabled? Am I handicapped? No, but it's all helping, right? So we are all surrounded by technologies. Lights help illuminate. Chairs help with productivity. Everything's helping, okay? And you don't have to be disabled to be, assisted by these technologies. Good, good. These are important, clear distinctions that she's making, or getting rid of distinctions that don't matter. The 141, right before she starts with her little itemized list, it says in the last paragraph, we are all getting help from the things we make. And so the question then becomes how to understand the world of things, of objects, artifacts, furniture, media, all the things that we surround ourselves and use to kind of go around and do things, whether it's digital, whether it's not digital, a ladder, a shoe, a shoelace, all these things are technologies that help us do things. And the question really should be like, what do we need, and what do we need more of and better of to help any particular kind of body or or user with a particular kind of experience or task. Shoot. My screen just froze up. I'm going to hope that this is still going. Okay. So that's kind of the setup. And then she gives us, she says, I want to suggest some possible dispositions for designers and artists, just sort of things to keep in mind, taking a look at ability and disability. And she gives us how many? Like 6 or 7? Six-ish little suggestions. Invisibility is overrated. Invisibility is sort of connected to this idea of shame, this idea of like, I have a disability and I don't want anyone to see my hearing aid, or I don't want anyone to see my cane because I need help. Her thing is like, nah, we're all disabled in some sense. We are all needing help. We are all using assistive technologies. So why do we need to hide anything? Why do we need to make something invisible? Maybe we should play around with making things more visible. I've been hearing something about the new Apple earbuds are moving in this direction of like this exact kind of assistive thing, right? With as a hearing aid. So I like this idea of earbuds moving in the direction of hearing aids, or having hearing aid like capabilities as part of their function. Wouldn't that be cool, right? And especially when she gets into this business of gradations and editing. What if we were able, because these Silicon Valley engineers are very clever, what if we could edit all kinds of technologies, especially digital technologies, to help with a range of functions and just weave it into the everyday function of the earbuds anyway? That's really neat. Number 2, rethink the default bodily experience. Yeah. Who or what represents the default body? Right? Is it a male? Is it a female? It's always able-bodied. It's, someone in their prime in terms of how high and how strong and how many stairs you're able to go up, right? Well, maybe we cannot get rid of our assumptions or our wishes for something like a ideal type. That's a controversial kind of thing that we might want to engage in on the side, is like a discussion of, is having an ideal a good thing or a bad thing, right? Like she wants to suggest, let's just get rid of ideals. Let's get rid of these ideas about like better, best, whatever. But I think we still, as a like species, as a society, we still want to have things that we want to like aim for and admire and go after. But wouldn't it be nice to have both, right? To have, on the one hand, the ideal that we can go after, but on the other hand, not the negative version of the like, oh, because we don't reach the ideal, we're therefore garbage. What if we could have both? We could have the ideal, but all of the other possibilities being also good, right? Is that possible? In any case, consider fine gradations instead of qualitative change. Yeah, this is what I'm saying with like the earbuds. Like, what if we can edit and just make them a little bit more user-friendly in terms of those who have actual hearing challenges and so on, right? Instead of just big, grand, like, oh, here's a new arm for you. But like, no, what about smaller things? Like, adding little things to help with this and that. She gives an example of the Wander Rest. I Googled it really quickly. It's just like a little, almost looks like a little bookshelf kind of thing, or bookend that you can attach to the side of a pole. It's just a little seat, quickie little, just like easy to put up, and it helps people who've been walking for a while, or if maybe they are a little older and they need, more resting or whatever. Just something you can lean against any old pole. This is maybe not the prettiest example, but I've noticed in England, I think it's like with the football culture and the clubs and the matches, like I've seen these little stands, because there's drinking and the behavior around drinking and sports and all the rest of it. You want to try to control things as much as possible. And I've seen these little like portable urinals things where it's literally just like walk up to a stand with a little kind of cup, and it's not pretty, it's out in the open, but it's like better than just going out on the street kind of thing, right? And so I'm fascinated by like coming up with these little object solutions to these kinds of problems. Now, how is this rhetoric? Well, you're dealing with people's realities, you're dealing with people's behaviors, their everyday kind of social maneuvers, right? And we need to be thinking about the environment and the built environment as also rhetorical in the sense that it's communicating, right? I had a grad student, just like last year, Miranda. She did this really cool analysis of this kind of stuff. She did an affordance theory based analysis of the green spun building, right? So we were doing this project that was making the argument that a building can be rhetorical in the sense that it can communicate preferences and priorities, and it can encourage and discourage, and it can even block and prohibit, and it can force, and so on. So she did this analysis of the building, and she discovered some interesting things, which is like the building was really this sort of statement piece. This goes back to like 2005, 6 that the Greenspun building was created, and it was really built as this like, we're going to make this super impressive thing. And so it has this big stairs and the big central plaza, right? And everything was about grand and impressive and the big columns and everything. But she noticed that it was very kind of unfriendly if you were someone who isn't good with stairs, right? You're forced to walk around the building to find an elevator. And so even a building can encode certain assumptions about the bodies that it privileges and prioritizes over other bodies. And so she was discovering this kind of stuff doing the analysis, right? So our environments speak and they persuade in the sense that people were behind the design and the construction and building of our spaces and our buildings and our parks. You know, like I'm thinking of like downtown. Because, you know, there's the unhoused all over the place downtown, and some buildings don't like people, you know, hanging around, loitering or whatever. And so they build these bumps into, you know, the benches so that no one can sleep or skateboard. You can even notice these anti-skateboarding clips in the plaza of the Greenspun building. I don't know if you've noticed on the edges of the seats. There's all these little silver kind of metal things that they screwed in there, and there used to be skateboarders out there like crazy. This is all kind of rhetorical. This is a way of saying, stop doing that. We don't want you to ruin our building with your skateboards anymore. So this is all a world of communication, persuasive kind of communication in the sense that certain bodies are encouraged or discouraged in certain ways. Number 4 gets back to that opening illustration of the medical diagnosis. Like, let's move it out. Let's think medically, but in a broader sense. Let's think about uses. Let's think about needs more broadly. She mentions the work of Temple Grandin, who's sort of famous for coming up with more humane ways of slaughtering cattle, right? And it really had to do with trying to understand. This actually gets back to the Barnett stuff on trying to understand the earthly coexistence and the needs of the cows, right? And it's like they were much calmer when they had this kind of this kind of squeezing thing going on. I saw a documentary. She was talking about this. It's pretty interesting stuff. Anyway, design for one. I'll skip over that one. It's a little specific, but let the tools you make ask questions, not solve problems. I think there she's asking for some playfulness, some openness, right? And again, it goes hand in hand with this. Let's open up design. Let's open up what we think of as a body and ability versus disability, right? Like if design can be more open and playful, then we can sort of speak to broader audiences of users and so on, right? So that's where I'll stop. I don't want to take too long. I've already gone plenty long. So the body and the body in relation to the built and structured world around us is what we're talking about here. Sorry, blowing up. So I think this is really fascinating stuff because it kind of gets at the ways that sort of bodies and spaces communicate with each other. And here we are as designers, people who create spaces or fashion or create office spaces or technologies or experiences and so on. And these are all good things to be thinking about what it is, whether we're designing, you know, we're an event planner or we are, you know, making web pages or we are making fast fashion or whatever. We can be thinking along these lines, all right? So hope that's working for you, and we will continue on. Peace.